Hello everyone and welcome to the latest edition of Startup Grind's Founder Series, where we educate our community on highly relevant early stage topics through interviews with founders of our top startups. Today's subject is company building as a solo founder. The goal is, as usual, to educate our other founders in the community about how Veronica has navigated the first 4 years of Didimo as a solo founder, covering starting up, fundraising, building product, hiring, and developing culture for scale. Just to start with some introductions, once again, I'm Alex Gordon-Furse, VP of Sales and Startups here at Startup Grind, which is the world's largest startup community, educating, inspiring, and connecting founders, pre-seed, seed, and Series A startups across 120 countries. My guest today is Veronica Orvalho, who is the founder and CEO of Didimo, who are based in Porto, in Portugal, which we were just talking about before the recording kicked off. Another incredible city. It seems like I only interview founders from incredible cities that I love. Veronica, I read a Forbes article where you were quoted as saying, "I want to fundamentally change the way we interact with the digital world," which is a very bold vision statement, which I love. And then I read your website for Didimo today, which summarizes neatly what you do. Didimo is the leading creator of high-fidelity digital humans. Our 3D technology brings authenticity to virtual interactions. It certainly sounds like you're making good progress towards your vision. Where did your passion come from? What could you tell us a bit about your background before Didimo?
Yeah, so, well, I'm from Argentina. I happily moved to Europe maybe like 20 years ago. I have a degree on software engineer. I love skiing. I'm pretty much an adventurist, so I have no fear. And even though I'm an engineer, I'm a pretty optimistic engineer. That's what people say around me. So the idea of Didimo came from, I think it was there all the time. I'm passionate about learning and sharing what I know. And there was a clear moment when I was doing research at the university in Porto. I've been studying faces for many years, and I did a beautiful project on autism to help develop technology to help kids to improve their communication skills. And we developed an application that you can draw facial expressions in a 3D character, and then with the intention of the child will improve how they communicate with their family and friends. And in one of the many sessions, we had a father and a child that will test heavily our technology. And at the end, we'll do the questionnaire on how it went, the session and everything. And in one of the sessions, the little child, he started to smile. And we are talking about a child that has severe autism. So his dad will have to grab his hand to help him draw the expressions in the 3D character, right? And this was in 2010, when 2011, when the tablets had just came out to the market. So we had to migrate the whole technology into tablets. Before we were just developing our own Surface desks, like with Microsoft, right? And after the session, the dad said, "Can we just take the tablet? Can you let us borrow it?" Because they were no, it was not even easy to get tablets back then. And we said, "Okay, yeah, sure, come whenever, just give it back." And I was like, "Okay, what are you going to be doing with it?" Because we were very interested about the exercises on the tablet. And he said, no, I'm going to be using it. And I was like, why are you going to be using it? It's for your son. And he's like, no, I'm going to use the application so I can communicate with my son and draw the expressions on how he felt every time his son was doing something correct or not, or happy or sad. And it was one of those big kind of aha moments, when you have on your hands this technology. You don't know really well what it's going to be for, but it has a power of changing a family's life, right? And that's what the basic need, now looking back is easier, but that's when you see that there's just something has to change, right? And that was in 2010, 2011. And we continued developing, technology to improve embodiment for other projects. We were part of big European projects. But it always, kind of like kept me thinking on how the next generation of communication would be. And then, long story short, fast forwarding to 2015, 2016, I was approached I've always been approached to say, why don't you commercialize your technology? And I kept on saying, well, it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready. No one wants, digital humans besides the game and entertainment industry, which we work with, right?
Yeah.
First projects I did was for the Simpsons ride at Universal Studios. So, um, and it suddenly pretty much it changed when I saw that technology that was meant for the game and entertainment industry was changing someone's life.
Yeah.
And you're like, God, I never really thought that what I was doing could have additional impact. So then I started all the time saying, okay, how can we expand this and make it useful for more people and more people and more people? Always first on a very narrow space, which was more on, I guess, human interaction for those that need it the most. Maybe someone that can't speak. How can we create, an interface that they can use the digital character to speak to someone that has hearing impairments, right? And then I got the chance to create Didimo to make that happen and not continue being just a research project at the university. It was, I guess, the chance to say, now we can take it from a research to a commercial product, and hopefully one day it will be back again in the hands that need it the most, right?
Yeah, I mean
So
that is an incredible way to start uh, a long kind of journey. Knowing that it's a very you already have a very powerful purpose because you started by solving really serious problems for people who really needed help and support. And so I'm interested in how 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 did the day to day of what you were spending your time on change when it went from a research project to a commercial enterprise, to a business? How did
transition.
your day to day change?
The transition. Well, first, I'm extremely thankful for the university because they gave me a sabbatical, right, just to be able to give it a try. So, and the first thing, I'm a researcher by nature, right? And I'm a teacher in deep of my soul. So even though we were approached by an investor to create a company, I said, no, let's just test out if the technology was, we need to validate the technology. So that was the first thing. I didn't stop researching. I kind of like flew to San Francisco to the Game Developers Conference, contacted a few people at Amazon. They were super kind of getting on a meeting with us. They validated, we had a meeting on the 20 something floor of a hotel in San Francisco, and they saw the tech, and they say that it was the best thing that they've seen in the show. And that meant that it was validated by people that know what they're doing. They do gaming all the time. And next year we were invited to be with Amazon at their booth. So that was tech validation. But that wasn't enough to really say, okay, well, let's just build a company, right? Because we only had a really big, bold vision, as you said, the will to change, more than change is even another, is find out how we will interact in the future, right? Because it's not written in stone and we're still discovering it. And then we say, okay, well, how about the business side? Because if in research, I apply for European research, I get the grant, I do my research. In the business, it's just completely different for me. Everything is new, still, new, many things, most, I would say. And so we were accepted to Techstars in London, which was the moment that I said, okay, well, now is the time, right? So that whole happened in less than 2 months, really, 3 months. Okay. Asked for the sabbatical and moved to London. And for the next 5 months, 6 months, really just did not sleep.
Wow.
So it was a big change because I moved my family, everyone, to London.
Mhm.
So my husband was working in Barcelona, so he had to fly to London all the time. Techstars was incredible, very immersive, and everything changed. I don't even know how to say one thing, but I became even more. Uh, it's not obsessed, because obsessed is not a positive word. It's not good to be obsessed.
Yeah.
It's with more energy, with more, I want to get this done, right?
Yeah. It's almost like
And
your energy became even more concentrated on
yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. It's like you're like laser focused
laser
into
focus. Yeah.
this has to happen, right?
And
And you're like,
how many of you were there at that point? I mean, obviously you started
there's
Didimo
just
yourself.
me still.
Just you still. Wow.
So when I flew to London, I was also very fortunate that someone from the US came to help me for the month I was in London. So
Yeah.
that was really helpful to be at Techstars with someone else. But pretty much it was me. I did have one engineer that I just hired, just like an outsourcing,
Yeah.
so it could build like an application and interface and setting up the infrastructure. And the other big change was I had a huge lab in Porto, like huge, like 300 meters, tons of people on and off, like about 20 people in the lab. So it took me about a year to make the transition, because you gotta guarantee that everyone finds a job, they finish their PhDs, not applying for more European grants. So it's a big change that you cannot do suddenly, really, right? You really need to be emotionally, I needed to be emotionally ready for that change. um, but as I'm an adventurous, it was exciting for me. It's always exciting, really.
I said, yeah,
So
exactly. It's just another adventure, and you're going.
yeah, and I think you just gotta face it that way. It's like no fear, go for it, just be adventurous, but know your path.
Mhm.
So I guess the best analogy I can give, maybe I'm just drifting away from the question you asked me.
Okay. It's really interesting.
Yeah, so the analogy I could make is with one of my passions, which is skiing, right? So if you're at the top of the mountain and you want to go down, you're just not going to go down in crazy mode, right? Of course, you got to be no fear, because you don't know what's going to happen. You got to choose the right steep for
Yeah.
your ability, but
Yeah.
then you got to trace your path, right? And you got to do it on the top. You got to look down and say, okay, well, which way am I going to go and how am I going to make it happen? So I guess it's, made it sound simplistic, but it's kind of the same way, right? You just got to choose your path. You cannot choose it too far away. So it's
Yeah.
like in skiing, you only choose what you see, and there's always a piece that you don't see,
Yeah.
and it's revealing, you know.
I like that a lot. I think well, probably there's bits that I'm going to ask you later on, which I think will go more into like the decision making processes you went through to choose your path, and we can come back to that analogy because I really like it. I think it will help us kind of unpack it. But I'd love to understand those first months when you were obviously you were picking your path, as you said, a solo founder. What were can you talk me through the processes that you followed initially to test and iterate on your commercial MVP? So the first time that you went from, the solution within academia to actually thinking, how will this be, what's my hypothesis for wider use in the kind of public market, I guess, if you want to put it.
Yeah. So well, being at Techstars really helped significantly, because we are, deep tech. We still today, we're still developing the next generation of our core platform, right? So building the business idea, I was surrounded by a lot of people at Techstars that I could go and ask questions, but I knew that first stage is creating content, right? So that's why I contacted Amazon, and I was like, okay, how can we create content at scale, right? And then you also, in my case, I contacted the players that I thought they will benefit the most. And
How did you find those players? Like, how did you decide who you were going to contact, and then how did you actually contact them?
well, the first one that I decided to contact was really Amazon, and it was for strategic reasons. They just launched a new game engine to the market back in January 2016. Okay, So I contacted them and I thought, I mean, they're going to need characters, and let's just reach out. Well, I had Unity, Unreal, and Amazon, and the way Amazon was putting their engine out, it makes sense for me to contact them initially, even though we had already developed things in Unity and Unreal, so we had everything pretty much covered back then. So that was the first one, and then the fact that we were introduced to the Game Developers Conference the less than a year after. We were very fortunate because companies just find us. So that's how we did our next project with Sony. So it wasn't about quantity of working with many people, because we could not absorb working with many companies, because soon we were on like 3 people, right? So how many companies you can work with if you're just 3 people or 4, right? So it was Amazon first, and then it was Sony. So we pretty much tried to like handpick people we work with. And Sony, they found us at the Amazon booth. They just came to us, and then we worked really hard, and with them we developed the 3D. We adapted their scanning for mobile phones to our full engine. So it helped us move our product forward. So here a key learning is that whichever partnership you do with, you just have to move your roadmap forward, right? So not deviate, because then it's really difficult to come back. We suffered that as well. So that's why I'm saying the lesson learned is just don't deviate. And Sony was a great example.
So does that mean I mean, I guess coming back to the analogy of picking your path, it's almost like if assuming you've already kind of decided, the next sort of section of the path that you want to take, you're choosing a partner and calibrating or trying to basically understand to what degree they are going to meet you on the path that you want to take, versus force you to go off on a path that is sort of perpendicular to where you want to go.
Correct. It's really, I mean, and we have some examples that we deviated for reasons we wanted. But if I look back, deviation, either you have a strong reason why you'll do it, because you see that maybe a year later it will bring you benefits, or it will push your roadmap features forward. I mean, you got to have a really strong reason in order to do them, because otherwise it could be really costly, right? So for us, the sequence, Amazon first, and then very fortunate that Sony found us at the Amazon booth. And what was magical about that encounter was that it was really late on one of the almost last days at the GDC. I was alone at the booth, right? So it's just like, I have one person back at home, doing the engineering part. And they come and they say, "What are you doing?" And I was like, no, I'm just not going to tell you again what I'm doing.
Because at these conferences, you're spending the whole day pitching to people.
Yeah, right? So imagine end of the day, one more person comes and says, "What are you doing?" No being disrespectful for anyone. I mean, I do the same thing. I could only go see the booth at the end of the day, right? And I was like, no, I'm just going to tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing. I was tired of repeating. And so I was like, in 5 years, everyone is going to have a Didimo on their mobile devices. And they say, no, sooner. I was like, sure, that would be awesome. And then they say, we're from Sony and we would love to explore a little bit more. And it's just a beautiful project we did with them. So it's a technical collaboration, and that was the beginning of a really good relationship. So, and we learned a lot, it was our first client, right, of a big company. So we learned a lot, and that was great. So from that on, it's just, you just move your needle, and you choose your next.
And it sounds like, again, like just going back to the idea of, the fact that you're a solo founder. And I like the idea that you said, deciding to sort of try and commercialize this thing that you'd been working on, you'd already been an academic for 15 years. You decided to, I think it was 15 years, right? By that stage.
Yeah.
You know, your energy was becoming even more concentrated on this one idea. It sounds like, and also based on what you were saying there about, you know, telling the Sony person why you were doing what you were doing, not what, but the why, you know, and that's a common thing, right? Start with why you're doing it. Perhaps the fact that you had such concentrated energy on this one vision actually really helped you as a solo founder almost be greater than the sum of your parts, right? When you're telling the story, because you're selling a future that you really genuinely, deeply believe in and you know a lot about. So would you feel like actually, did you learn about storytelling in those early days more because you were sort of forced to do it?
Not really. I never learned storytelling, but I think I've been teaching for so long that the only way to keep your students engaged, if you just tell them why they're learning what they're learning, really.
Couldn't agree with that more. I was always asking why.
Well, because otherwise it's just sitting there, just watching into a PowerPoint presentation, and it's just like, you know, one more, and it's just kind of boring, really. So for them, I mean, this deviates a little bit of Didimo, but I, with the help of the school where my kids go, and Lydia Silva, who was the founder of the school, CLIP, we create, and a few other teachers, we created a new teaching method that we tested it at the school first with high school kids. And because I wanted to change the way you teach at the university. Yeah, why not just try to change the whole system, right?
Another adventure you chose to go down.
I wasn't very famous for many years at the university because of that. So but this is a complete true story, like, you know. So I tried to change the whole learning process that for me was failing miserably, the way, you know, it was being done. So I started innovating and creating this new learning method that pretty much what it does, it just enhances lifelong learning, really. You know, within the Bloom taxonomy, it teaches you, it tries to teach you the top of the pyramid, which is how do you acquire knowledge, not by memorizing, right? Okay, I'm not gonna get into that space in detail, but the lesson here is that for the first 4 years or 5 years that I was trying to change the way students would learn at my class, I was failing miserably, like bad, failing. Students were complaining, other professors were complaining, everyone was complaining. I would like go crying to Miss Silva, say, this is not working. And she's like, you can't give up. And she would tell me, if you've changed the brain of one student, you should be happy because you've done your job well. And I did change one or two those years, you know, every year. And suddenly I figured out what was missing. It was really silly. I forgot to explain them why I was teaching in a different way, right? Why I was doing it. And I changed that, and I started introducing 5 minutes videos explaining complete different, nothing related to I teach computer graphics, nothing related to computer graphics. It was about human skills, you know, why, you know, you need to, what is important of your attitude in life, and many other things. And they understood it. And the number of students coming to my class duplicated. I have today 100% satisfaction on the students that attend the class. You know, people, like students texting me thanking for, you know, the way it's being done. But it took me 4 or 5 miserable years of failing because I wasn't explaining why I was doing that. And I guess it's the same, you know, if we take it to Didimo and building a company. It is reflected in every onboarding of when we hire someone. It is reflected when we talk to a client. If we don't know why we're sitting at that moment with that person, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I guess the way that you're saying, you know, that the student satisfaction rating went up, I guess it would be the same with an employee that you hire or a customer that you onboard, right, the churn rate reduces because those people feel a sense of belonging almost, because they, you know, they obviously chose to join you, or, you know, whether they're a customer or an employee, they chose to join you after understanding like and connecting with the reason why you were doing it. And I think that that's a really interesting learning that you've sort of explained there. So
Yeah, and it's the only thing that really, when those hard moments hit you, right, is the only thing that will keep you going. You know, the only reason I was keep on going at the university with my new teaching method is because I knew at the end they would have learned new skills that they will be lifetime value. And the same is with Didimo. I know that the day we get our technology in the hands of everyone, really, of course the immediate ones are, you know, gaming and entertainment and virtual concerts and retail for buying better garments. That those are the obvious early adopters, because those are the ones that have the money and the access to it. But when that is done, the real change, it's only going to happen after. It's not now. The real change is going to happen when that child that suffers from autism now has a new way of communicating
yeah,
and interacting with his friends. And it's going to be for that one that cannot speak or talk. It's going to be the same person on the online world like everyone else. Imagine someone that suffers like Steve Hawking's.
yeah,
On the digital world, it will be the same,
yeah,
really. And and the key thing is because they will control it. Imagine if we have this technology. I mean, hopefully all the big companies will really make internet available for everyone in the world, and we can give a mobile device to someone in a frontier school in Argentina or in the south of Africa, where they have the real needs, not us that we're sitting here really cozy, right? They have access to someone that is in a development country with access to information that long distance can explain them in their local language how to solve a problem they have. That's when the real change is going to happen, right? And we're still many years away from it, but what we're building today, it's the impact that it's going to have afterwards.
yeah.
So that's why I'm doing what we're doing, really. And it just is what keeps you going every
Yeah,
day that it's
it's a
hard.
really powerful mission, and it's certainly drawing me in. So I'm sure that anyone who's watching it will feel the same way. And I'd love to kind of coming back to the practicalities of those first couple of years in Didimo. Obviously, you've got this long-term vision or mission, which is your kind of, I guess, your direction,
Yeah,
your
the North Star, really,
yeah,
right?
North Star.
Or my
And
South Star, so I can think I can go to Patagonia one day
there you
again.
go, your South Star back home. But you're kind of you're mapping your path piece by piece. And your first piece was this, you mentioned a couple of times the gaming and entertainment industries to start with. Did you just narrow down to your focus to those? I mean, obviously you said they've got the money and it's the most present need in the commercial world, I guess. But is that like, what other kind of levers did you, or what other, what other elements did you use to make your decision to focus on those?
That's a very good question. So I mean, the technology we're building is pretty much cross-platform, cross-industry, right? So one of the big challenges we always had, we still have from the very beginning, is, okay, which industry do we go for, right? So we started with the game and entertainment industry because that's where my contacts were pretty much. And also because the technology was there. They understand what I was building. It could be used for content creation, even though for content creation is not the big scale, right? But it could be the early adopters. They would provide us feedback, right, on how we do things. So it was the natural way to go. Then with the Sony, it really pushed us into understanding that communication was a big space. And then for a period of time, we put our technology out there on our first website, and we start sending messages to see which requests we get. And we got requests from the education space, from healthcare, from sports, from fashion. And we use that from entertainment continue to be like virtual concerts and so on. We continue to like, we kind of like open it. So people, we will see which one was getting more strength, right? And gaming, entertainment, and fashion were the ones that really drive the decision into moving forward. So that's, I mean, we dedicated time to analyze which markets were contacting us the most, and then we make the decision to go for those two areas.
And what was your kind of your pitch when you first started out? Because obviously it's an early concept, potentially quite abstract to other industries, less so to them, because obviously that's where the most present need is, you know, computer graphics and games and as you say, virtual concerts and so on. But what was your first pitch with Didimo at the state it was in at that time?
It's very interesting, that question, because as we are writing now the deck for the Series A, we have in our office in Porto, which you should come because it's by the beach. It's a beautiful place and we can't be in the office, but it's beautiful. But we have there a mountain that I draw, right? With the 4 first people that were at Didimo, and with post-its, we did our camps all the way to the top of the summit. And still today, that remains the same. So the pitch was the same as what we are talking today. We really, what we've done is now, as we have Jim in as our marketing director and Matt in our business team, we've just polished really the wording, okay? But the pitch is the same. Is we want to create the most emotional, expressive digital humans with to improve the interaction in the digital world. So what we did learn was, okay, we learned more of what that means, right? And what it means is that the big breakthrough, this is what I believe, okay, is on one hand, creating the most immersive, expressive digital humans that you control, okay, with a novel interface, with a novel interaction model, right? So how that digital human will, once you embedded it into a virtual world, will behave, and how are we going to interact with them? And all will go through, in our case, through our platform and our API. So the API will not just have the component of the emotional piece, but it also will have the component of the interaction piece. So if I look at the essence, the pitch is the same. What it has evolved is our know-how on how to materialize, how to make it happen, really.
And obviously, earlier on we talked about picking partners that at least align with the direction that you want to take with your business. How did your approach to product development change once you had onboarded Amazon and Sony as users of Didimo? How did you negotiate and work with them on the development of the product?
Well, okay. In terms of the development of the product, with them was very straightforward because they knew what they wanted, really. And that makes a difference. So if I could give a suggestion to everyone listening, do treasure those companies that come to you. And if they come to you with a product description, just like do treasure them even more, okay? Because if you're working with someone that doesn't know what they want, it's very complicated. It's not it's not impossible, but it just takes longer to really nail it down, which is the deliverable, right? As long as you have a very defined roadmap on your side and you have it crystal clear that you're not deviating. So it goes back a little bit what we were talking before, right? So if a client comes with their product, they said, we want this, can you do it? Can you do a piece of a bespoke development? Then you decide, okay, I'll allocate part of my team to do that bespoke development because it just doesn't deviate me from my roadmap, or I do allocate a little bit of resources on the other side because it's worth, because a year from now I'll see the benefit or whatever. So do go for it. So if they come with no requirements, it just becomes really complicated. Amazon and Sony were just boom, straightforward. This is what we want.
So
A
did you,
plugin and speech
yeah.
was with Amazon, and Sony was, we have the 3D mesh. We need it to be animatable and looking good. So
What kinds of things, I don't know if you can give information on these, but what kinds of things practically were they actually using your technology for? And can you explain how do they access the technology, and
yeah.
what are they using your, the linkage for?
Yeah, so the first use case we did with Amazon was just to allow their developers to create digital characters embedded into their game engine. So that was the first use case, but what was best was the second one, which was they needed to do visual speech. So they have the poly technology, right? And they didn't have a quick way to visualize what poly will come out visually. So that's what we did. We just we integrated poly with our engine, and we had a web player embedded on their side that we gave, that every time you do a text to speech, you can visually see how the speech will come out. So that was one.
Because you've done the work on creating an engine that optimizes the way that a digital human kind of moves their face in alignment with how how it might be speaking, how words might be coming out. Because you've done that work, essentially they're kind of outsourcing the code that you've built to do that to you and pulling it from you to develop their own product.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So what we have is a platform that runs on the cloud. So you can input a 2D photo or an image with depth information, much better, or a scan, like a 3D scan, a point cloud or something. And we process in the cloud, and we create a very nice, clean geometry of a face, right? The better the input, the better the result, okay? We fix many things, like for example, if you take a photo of me, I can see I have a lot of illumination here. I should have a better setup. That's why I have my hat. And we normalize the illumination and the texture, so you don't see these, burn color on the face. So we fix things in the image, and then we give the result is a 3D character that is ready to be embedded into any 3D environment, because for instance, the textures are normalized. We also put inside the character the things that no one sees, which is how it will move your face, like the control structure, really. If you have a puppet, it will be the strings of the puppet. Okay? So we give the 3D character ready to be animated. And today you can, for instance, plug it in with the AR kit, right? And then animate it. So suddenly something that was extremely complex, it became super simple with just one button and 90 seconds, really. So
they could do it if they really wanted to. They could do it, but it would take a lot longer than what you have created. You've enabled them to be able to then do it in,
at scale. Yeah, right. So they could have done it with just one character and just put it there.
Yeah.
And what we also did was the algorithm that will grab what it's called the voicemes. So when you speak, you produce voicemes. So that information, which is text file, goes into our system, and it returns the visual animation. So we translate the text, which tells you which voicemes when we were speaking, and it produced the visual result. It's a complex problem because when we speak, if you just give the pure voiceme, you might look like you are speaking like this, So how do you, it's called the co-articulation problem. So how do we solve that in order to make a fluid visual animation? And we did that with Poly, but our goal now is just as we grow, and maybe I'm jumping into how do we scale, is how can we allow our platform, which produces a 3D asset, which is the product, the Didimo, to allow other voice activated systems or chatbots or text to speech or others beside Poly to use our platform, right? So how do we interface with all these other services that are coming out into the market? That's the power of our platform is that the engine is pretty much generic. So if a client comes and say, oh, I have a different control structure, I don't want to use your output file, like the geometry and the control structure, we say, okay, that's okay. We'll import theirs, and then still you can still generate a 3D Didimo, but that fits our client's specification because they already have a pipeline on how they work. So that's kind of like it's very technical, but it's the power, the magic sauce behind the scenes. The rest is it's just making it beautiful around. So and with Sony, the use case was different. So they already had a 3D geometry, but it was static, really. It was kind of like a scan. When it comes out of a scan, you can't kind of animate that. So what we did is that will connect to our platform, our platform service. It will automatically generate a very polished and clean geometry with a control structure, and it will just output the same thing. So we did a test, for instance, for PlayStation VR, where they grab the Sony scan, went to our engine or platform, output the new geometry with a control structure, got into the PlayStation VR, into the Unreal Engine, and in VR, they were just manipulating the 3D character. So suddenly the combinations are endless, really, because you can plug in and out any platform available.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an incredibly powerful platform in the world that we're in, and moving into more and more every single second of the day, right? It's moving faster than I think even I thought. And you said, right, when you first met the person from Sony, they said it will happen even sooner than 5 years, and I think it is moving incredibly quickly. So it's good news for you guys.
Yes, and what also you ask what changed on the pitch, a little, and thinking about it is with COVID and everyone being at home, and the power of virtual beings and virtual humans taking so much protagonism last year, suddenly we didn't need to explain that much what we do. Before, we just needed to explain what we do, what was the tech, why it was important. I felt like before what I was speaking was, oh my God, it's science fiction. What you're saying, it's only like 2 decades away. And I was like, no, it's going to happen. And now I feel people is just much more receptive, and they can see it, they can understand it. So now it's the other challenge, which is we got to move even faster. And people is expecting more quality. So we're at the moment building Didimo's second generation, right? So hopefully we'll have it, we'll launch it by mid-year.
And I'm interested at this stage, I think with kind of Sony and Amazon coming on board is like, maybe, was that sort of 2017, 2018?
Yeah, correct.
So, obviously we've gone into depth on your product development as you're working with those companies. I'd love to just understand a little bit more about this stage. Obviously you were a solo founder. How did you sort of scale up the team, and what decisions did you make for the types of people that you hired? For example, was it people to help you, develop the product more, or did you start to hire people in the kind of go-to-market space to actually help you with more outreach to other companies that you could potentially work with? Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I can share my mistakes, which I think is usually useful. So first I hire someone to help on the business development and marketing. And that didn't work out. Not because of the person was fantastic. It was just not the right time, right? I hired someone for doing business development when I didn't have a product, right? So the lesson learned there is this: I didn't believe it until I heard Ben Horowitz on a podcast that said, you're the founder, you got to figure out how the business model is going to be and how you're going to sell it. And only after you do, 10 of those, then you just hire your business person, really. So I was like, okay, I wasn't wrong, then. So that was first lesson. Unless, I would say, you find someone that can complement. I'm very technical, so unless you find someone that can complement, has the same passion, same vision, I could become kind of like your co-founder, I would say, and is on the business side. So I did try to find a co-founder, but unfortunately I couldn't find. I would suggest everyone that can do so, because otherwise it's really heavy lifting. So that's the first one. Just hiring too soon, it can be a mistake, not because of the person you hire, but because it's not the right time. So in my case, the first hires that were very, very spot on was the CFO. Not just because it was just personality wise, which is kind of like my right hand. It's just boom, it really.
That sounds really early to hire a CFO.
Well, she was part-time initially, right? But it takes a big burden out of the founder, because otherwise you're immersed in things that are tax issues, accounting, payments, and there's just like a lot of things. Even when you have your first deals, negotiating, creating the financial model for the investment round. So it's a lot. So I was presented, the former managing director at Techstars London said, Veronica, I have a person that I think will be perfect match. I was really good at sending investors update. So with my ask underneath, and I interviewed Anna at the airport when I was coming back from CES in London, and fantastic. So she started part-time because couldn't afford more than that either, and then slowly became full-time. So CFO found great help in my case, because I could do engineering at product. Okay, so I guess you look for those things that you don't know, right? I think that would be my kind of like my first advice. Just look for that complement that you don't know. Why are you going to hire someone that has your same skills, right? And then head of engineering to help, on the everyday, because it was difficult otherwise. And head of HR, if you're going to grow your team, just bring your head of HR. It was very organic because she was my kind of like my coach, my personal coach on when I was at the university, right? And it organically happened. Hope she's still happy because she's doing much more things than just coaching now, right? So
I hear a lot of founders saying one thing that they wish they had done earlier before they scaled their team was hire a head of HR who had a lot of experience hiring.
And I explain you why, and I'll tell you the benefits of that. As I said, just keep in mind that I had the CTO product skills and I had the vision, right? So I knew what I wanted to build. I just needed help with everything else. We did tons of mistakes on initial hires. Again, not because of the person skills, but because maybe they weren't like a right fit in terms of culture, mindset, or whatever. So the our HR head of HR, what she did, she knew me so well, like so well, right? She knew my values, like what ticks me, what I like, what I really care about people. So it was by distilling those core values that when we interview, we will look for, she will look for those traits, that this person fits my values, right? Besides having the skills, because then chances are that, your team will grow with the same core fundamental values. And that builds a really strong team, right? And I can see it now. It's just people that are with me from the very beginning still are here because of the same values.
Yeah, it's like the positivity. If you hire someone good, that positivity is going to compound positively, and if you hire someone bad, that negativity will probably compound negatively, because that person you hire is going to be hiring other people, right? So if you hire a bad person that's not a good fit, they'll probably hire other people that are other. When I say bad person, right? I mean not.
Yeah, no, completely. It's because the best thing I learned about culture was when I was invited by Google for entrepreneurs and Black Box to a 2 weeks intensive leadership I don't even know how to call it, because it wasn't a course, because I was living with other 14 girls
Like
in
a
a house.
fellowship almost.
What, sorry?
A fellowship, we might call it.
Maybe, yeah, fellowship. I was just I was living with 14 other girls in a house in San Francisco for 2 weeks,
Yeah,
learning about.
I know the black box setup.
Oh God, it was amazing, and I made some friends from for life really there. So and I was one of the oldest one, I think. Anyway, so um, Alex Taber, he said, culture is about your own values, because your values then become amplified. They're kind of like a signal, right? They get amplified by what you do, not by even what you say. So if you find someone that shares your same values with their uniqueness, they'll amplify even more and more. So you got to be really careful, what type of people you bring on board in terms of the core values. And for me, the core value is authenticity. If I got to pick one, it will be authenticity. Each one of us have, our own core value. For me, it's like authenticity and freedom, but it's just by nature. And then we have like 4 other traits that we look, I look for like really people that has a lot of grit. So they're grit it's a positive word. It's not just resilience, right? It's just making things with a positive mindset, move forward. And people that love learning and that they're humble, right? And so those are kind of the well, and get stuff done. That's um being smart is by nature, really.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, something that you mentioned in that same Forbes article I talked about earlier was that you thought building a diverse team was key to yours, or has been key to your success as a solo founder. So I'm
Completely.
interested, like, what does, we've gone through the commonalities that you'd look for in terms of character and values and culture in the people you hire, but what does a diverse team mean to you, and like how are you measuring for that
Oh yeah, so diverse goes all the way from the type of food everyone eats, people, just people that like different things, even from the food, because they will just bring brownies and cookies to the office, so the fact that they share their own culture and their own tastes, that is important, all the way to, different cultures, different languages. So it's diverse in every single way of the word. People is used to referring to diversity as like male, female, right? Religion. No, for me, diversity comes from the very basic things: how you dress, how you, get to the office. Do you get biking? Do you come by car? Do you walk? We used to have like even surfboards at our office. That the diversity on sports, on hobbies, because all that enriches people. When you see, people organizing board games, and people that never played a board game, they just go and join. It just, you learn a new thing, you socialize. So it really diversity in every single way of what the word means. And I can felt it, like we have a Canadian team, and before lockdown, so we have Porto, Canada, like Vancouver and London. So we used to fly people, the whole team, at least once a year, and more of the key members more often, like every 3-4 months. When the whole team is in Porto, it's just happiness. It just goes to heaven, and the energy, and that's because, well, first, they haven't seen for like each other for like a long time, and they work all the time together. I think that helps a bit, but also they bring their own stories, and those stories enriches the communication. You get to know the other person. And some is like, we have one person that he has an island in Vancouver, right? How cool that is, you know? And when they share how they live, you start thinking, it's like, oh, maybe I could do that and also be happier, right? So yeah, diversity, I think, is not being talked enough and in the right way, but that's my opinion. So
how many people are you now? You mentioned 3 offices. How many people are you overall now?
oh God, we are hiring all the time. I think we're 30 or 32, 30 maybe.
How are you preparing for, because I mean, people talk about uh, I think there's a word, Dunbar's number, is like the amount of people that you can legitimately know and feel close to is has a certain sort of maximum. And and that sort of calibrates to companies, and like as you build, you can have a small tightly knit culture within a organization of 30, but once it gets above 30, between 30 and 100, it's a sort of another chunk, a different type of company, and then 100 and above, and so on. I don't know if I've got those thresholds exactly right, but how are you preparing for the next stage of growth in terms of your company?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how it's going to be when we're 40, really. I can tell you how it is now and how I hope it continues. So first, one highlight. So when you're 4, you just have also your kind of like closest people, right? So the first, from those 4, 2, I knew for more than 10 years, right? And I still have a lot of people in the company that I know for more than 10 years. So that helps a lot, right? And one thing that it's hard to maintain is when you start scaling and becoming customer facing. So when you're putting the product to the market, you have to hire another people with additional skills, right? Skills that maybe your team is not used to, because we are moving from a hardcore R&D experimental POC pilot type of environment to we got to deliver to a client. And that's a shock, right? So how do you prepare your team for that transition? That's one thing. And how do you prepare the person that comes in to say, hey, you're going to be, you're going to make turbulence in in the team. So that's one thing. Just you got to be always measuring and controlling, and that's why the head of HR is so important, right? But going back to the more of the essence, and this is me, I like to, every time someone joins Didimo, I write them a letter, and they get my letter written.
I love that.
Yeah, written with my pen, and I have one written. Now I have to scan them, right? And I don't know for how long I'm going to be able to continue doing it, right? So that's one. And I like to every 6 months at the most I used to book lunch with every person in the company, like a 1 hour, an hour and a half. We used to go out for lunch. No agenda, no nothing specific, just to get to know the person, right? Because the more I get to know the person, the better environment I can create for them. My sole role is just filling the gaps where there is, a gap to be filled, and the only way I can do it is if I know the person, right? So now instead of having the lunch, unfortunately, we just do like a Zoom call, we just try to bring a wine or, whatever. So it's just, with some people it's longer because they talk more. With some it's shorter because they're more shy. So I still try to get to know people. I try to, we have a good morning at 9:30. I only join every now and then, but I try to always know, did you get sick, just reach out to them. With the COVID, I was always, aware, it's like someone in the family okay, and that's where your HR person becomes really important. So Selena's job is reaching out all the time to everyone to see how they are. So now she got closer to them. That's a good thing, right? But I still try to maintain that really close relationship, right? I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it when we're 50. I do hope so.
But it
I don't
sounds
know.
like, it's like you're leading by example. You're actually showing other people who are in the senior management as well, like how you like to do it and how you think it should be done. And I guess, when the company scales, even if you can't do it, they'll know that that's the culture of the organization. And, senior management, other leaders who maybe have slightly more time than you, or, it's their role to do so, will take that on, right? Because you've instilled that
Hopefully.
culture.
I haven't thought about it, but yeah, hopefully.
It sounds like we should do
Yeah.
another one in a year and see how it's gone.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know, for instance, Selena, Anna has her financial team and administrative team. She does that all the time. So yeah, and I know some of the engineering teams. I was really happy when it was end of the year, and one of the girls on the art team say, hey, the Canadian team, because we had our Christmas kind of like virtual party, but it was like 9 o'clock for the Canadian team in the morning, right? And then one of the girls from the arts team say, hey, we're going to have another party with the arts team because it's in Canada. Anyone that wants to join is going to be at 11:30 our time, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm talking about Maria. She was the first artist I hired, and I interviewed her in the terrace of my house. And as soon as I saw her, I could tell she had the same, you know, the DNA I was looking for.
Yeah.
Again, maybe it's because I've been teaching for so long. You can just feel it on the skin when you meet someone. It was easier when it was in person, but virtually you can just tell.
Yeah.
We did make going back to your question to like the order of the hiring. So the next person after I had finance, HR, and engineer, it was the head of product, right? So we needed, you know, because I needed someone to help me craft the product for product market fit, because again, we are deep tech. We didn't succeed on that first hire, which was a shame. It really delayed our roadmap. It was a complete mess. It was beginning of last year.
Are you able to share why that didn't work?
Not really. It just didn't work. Let's just put it that way. Because yeah, it just, yeah.
And did you move quickly? So how did you move quickly to
move quick? Yeah, move really, really quickly. But then it took us long to find the second head of product replacement. And that had, you know, an impact into the company really, right? Because I needed to continue doing product. So we continued doing product, but that really just delayed us. And it was COVID in the middle. So it was just too many things. So fortunately, we did hire our head of business development, right? And he was very product oriented, which helped. So it filled in the gap while we were hiring the new head of product, which now we have a head of product since 4 months by now, and it's fantastic. So yeah, so learning to move fast when there's a mistake in the middle. I wouldn't say, I mean, it was a mistake, it just happened, right? Let's just leave it there, it just happened. But I do still suggest that if you're, in our case, or if you're a deep tech company, bringing your head of product before sales, it's really important. And I was giving that advice by a very well-known investor. So I'm very fortunate about the investors that we have at Didimo. So one of our UK investors, she said, Veronica, I'm going to set up a meeting with this person. He's just going to help you out to make right decisions. He had 45 minutes. You know, I explained him in like 10 where we were. And then in like the next 30, he's like, boom, 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 boom. And I just follow his suggestions. Sometimes if I don't know something, I just try to find the right person with vast experience, and then just follow the advice, really. You know,
that's a good moment, I think, to come on to my next questions. I know that we're sort of coming towards the end, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about fundraising.
Oh, wow.
I want to talk a little bit about fundraising. So you've raised from angels, from accelerators, you've raised from venture capital firms, it looks like, and also grants as well.
Yeah.
Start with a broader question, and we can dive deeper if we want to, but what are your top tips on early stage fundraising for other founders who are watching this?
Okay, it's a good question. So I started fundraising, and as I didn't have a clear execution path, right, it made it a little bit harder to do I don't know how to call it, like the seed round, right? So I was very fortunate because I had already a good pre-seed investment from like an angel and Techstars, right? So I was okay in runway, and, you know, didn't pay salaries to the founder myself, you know, just, there are a lot of things you just, you know, you live with what you have, you just survive in terms of funding, and just hire, you know, paying the least you can to that people. So so that I already had investments, so that was good. I was in a good place, which led me then, when I decided, okay, I'm just doing a fundraising and it's not the right moment, I don't have a clear execution path. So I stopped the fundraising and rethink how the execution path was going to be, reach for those initial how to say points or validation points that I needed, that I was hearing all the investors were asking. And then like 6 or 7 months later, I started receiving emails saying, hey, Veronica, are you doing or not doing the fundraising? And I got, I don't know how, I don't know if it was the time of the year. So I got several people reaching out, and I was like, well, maybe it's the right moment. I guess, naturally, I've been showing with the investor letters that I was doing progress, and people just reach out. So we did the investment round, and it went well. And then we applied for the European grant. So when we applied for the European grant, we already had the partnership with Sony. So, and we had a very clear idea of what we wanted to do. By the way, I applied for the European grant 4 times. 4 times, yeah, it got accepted.
How did you find the specific grant? Because I know that there are lots of different types of grants. How did you find the one that you wanted to apply for?
Well, I mean, for 15 years at the university, all I did was just looking for grants.
Okay.
So in my case, it was a no-brainer to find the right grant.
Is there anything that you would recommend to like help other people fast track?
Yeah, completely. First is the EU has a whole SME program. So if they write as keywords European SME instrument, or if they want to email me, I'm happy to send some pointers. But if they write SME instrument, they will just appear. And there's one in particular that is for early stage, and that's the one they should apply. So from when I applied for it, it changed a little bit the conditions, but nothing dramatically. And the key thing is you have to have a clear product, clear innovate. It has to be super innovative, right? So you need to open new areas of business by what you are doing. And if you have initial traction, or at least a clear partnership, you gotta have a clear path on how you're gonna scale and grow and why you need that investment. So in my case, we wanted the investment to fill the gap of not raising more money, right? And giving away equity. If I could get the European grant, then I don't need to give equity, right? So that was the reason. And I said it right openly when we were at the interview, because then you have an interview. Only the really top applications get accepted. So don't give up. I applied 3, got it at the 4th time. And we work close with a consulting firm that pretty much what they did was just help writing the document, but you need to dedicate the founder or the head of business or whoever is gonna write the proposal needs to probably dedicate 2 months to it.
Wow.
So it's harder to get European grants than probably an investor.
It certainly sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, so you need to be clear, because if you don't have a clear idea, then it doesn't matter if you have a technical writer helping you with the proposal, because the idea is not going to show up on the document. So but it was a plus. And then the other beautiful thing is then you get other many advantages from the EU. For example, I wanted to set up an ethics committee, because what we do can create a lot of controversial in the discussions, like who owns the virtual human, just to name the first point of discussion, right? How do you do with GDPR? And anyway, so you get consulting from the EU. So we get like many hours of external advisors. So we chose them on the ethics side. So we work with an expert on ethics, who's a lawyer, and on data privacy, who's helping us write all our terms and conditions, and well, we have a lawyer as well, but and you get a lot of support from the EU, and now we get the Invest Horizon and similar. So that's the grant I will strongly recommend if you have the time to spend 2 months writing it. I would work on the proposal at night, right? So I would, from like 9 to midnight or 10 to 2 in the morning, very regularly on writing and rewriting.
So it sounds like, again, probably, in part due to your background in academia, some of these sort of longer form writing pieces work well, right? So could you, again, based on your experience, it sounds like your investor updates have been very effective for you as well in getting investors to even chase you for your round, saying, you know, Veronica, are you actually raising, like, and they're coming to you?
Yeah, that on the early stage, yes. Yeah.
So do you have any like tips as well for other founders watching this on how to write the, you know, the perfect kind of investor update?
Oh wow, I think it's very personalized. I like to write them more as a story, really, right? They're probably longer to read. So initially, when I was doing the investors update in the beginning part of the company, it was more regular, right? Um, and so you know it was more organized, an intro and then commercial achievements, technical achievements, and the ask is very important, right? That's why you're literally writing the investor update, is for that ask. And to get, you know, hopefully the investors or people that get back to you are those that are interested in your company. So you can start building a relationship, right? So I'm all about building relationships. I really like to know the people that we work with. So I can say that the investors that we have and the advisors, you know, they're awesome people. And, you know, they're always one phone call away when you need them at any point in time. Now I've moved into, okay, we just have our investor update for just our our shareholders. And now that I have a marketing person, we will start creating some news. But my investors update, they just tell you a story, really. Or that, at least as you know, I ask a few of our advisors, should I make them more bullet point? And they're like, no, reading your updates are beautiful. So of course I list things, right? It's not like a whole book, but it has a story into it when you're reading it. Oh, I can hear you. I lost you.
You have external summary for people in your network who are potentially interesting for the future or who have an interest in
We're going to start again. Yeah, we're going to start again doing that because before, as we were developing the tech, you know, you're in still mode, so you can't really share much. But now that we're going to the market, yes, now we're going to start creating kind of it's not a newsletter, but it's more the people that want to know what we're doing, you know, we will send them, we will add them into our mailing list. And I already got a lot of people asking for it, thanks to all the investors we met, to you guys. So they said, well, can you just keep us updated? And yeah. So yeah.
That's amazing. So I'm aware, again, we're coming even closer to closing out now. So I'll just ask a final question. You know, you were saying the ask is very important. So what does the next kind of year or two look like for Didimo? And I guess what can Startup Grind and any listeners that we have watching right now, what can we help with as well?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for offering the help as well. So yeah, so now this year we want to really go out and create digital humans that are emotional, expressive, and reactive. So that's the next step. So now we have the core base foundation, so you can create digital humans. The next one is to really make them emotionally reactive and expressive, right? That's the next step. And then moving forward is to how can we create the ecosystem around digital humans. So you will own your digital human, you'll have it on your device, right? How can you interact with other applications that will accept the use of that digital human? So it's given the control and the privacy to the user because they will own it. So then they will decide where they can apply it to. So in some ways, one, create digital humans that are emotional and expressive, and then two is build up that ecosystem around that, the creation of that digital human, and hopefully that will create a new way on how people will just interact, because only when you put them into an ecosystem, then you can start defining the key interaction model that goes around it. You know? So that's what we have in pipeline. Yeah.
Talking about mapping your path, coming back to what we discussed at the beginning, it sounds like, you know, prospectively an interesting next stage of your adventure or your journey as a solo founder. So Veronica, it's been fantastic talking to you today. Lots of interesting learnings, an amazing story so far. Obviously, we'll be continue to talk and tracking what you guys do. But good luck and speak soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And thank you for being part of it with all your support. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.